Ta-da! Hey kids, welcome to Drink Tales. I'm Lemonade Larry, and I'm Milky Mike, and today we're gonna teach you about morality and leadership. Oh, that's a difficult subject, Lemonade Larry. I know, Milky Mike, but it's extremely important. We live in a world today where many leaders have no sense of morality. But what is morality, Lemonade Larry? I'm glad you asked, Milky Mike, because philosophers have been asking this question for thousands of years. Uh, there are many answers, but in the field of psychology, we use Lawrence Kohlberg's 1958 doctoral dissertation as a starting point. He defined morality not by how you live, but by how you think. Oh, that's the one where he proposed the 6 stages of moral development, right? That's right. The 6 stages are reward, punishment, individualism and exchange, conformity for the sake of interpersonal relationships, maintaining law and order, social contract and individual rights, and universal ethical principles. Let's start with stage one reasoning. Uh, Kohlberg used stories called dilemmas to illustrate moral principles, and psychologists can sort people into each stage of development based on their responses to these dilemmas. The most famous story is called the Heinz Dilemma. In this story, there's a man named Heinz, and his wife is dying of cancer. Uh, So he goes to the pharmacist to get a drug that will cure it. And the pharmacist says, "It took decades of research to develop this cure for pancreatic cancer, so I'll sell it to you for $10,000. But it only cost you 6,000 to produce it." "I know, but I need to make money." "Couldn't I pay for it over time with a monthly payment plan?" "No, I need all $10,000 up front, or I can't sell you the drug." "But my wife is dying." "I don't care. Pay up or get out." That night, Hines broke into the pharmacy and stole the drug because he didn't want his wife to die. "Hurry!" Ding 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 ding. Hines shouldn't be breaking into pharmacies and stealing drugs. He could get in a lot of trouble if the police found him. Oh ho ho! But that's exactly what someone at Kohlberg Stage 1 would say. The moral considerations of people in Stage 1 only extend to the consequences of their actions. In other words, things are only wrong if you get punished and right if you get rewarded. Well, what if Hines isn't thinking about the legal consequences, but more about what people will think of him if he steals the drug to save his wife? Then that would fall under stage two reasoning, where right and wrong is determined by how you personally benefit from it. Does that include how it affects your personal relationships? That would fall under stage three, actually, where we conform to the expectations of our peers to protect our relationships. Okay. But the law still matters, right? I mean, we can't just go around breaking into pharmacies just because they're withholding drugs that people need to survive. Because if the law stopped mattering, then everyone would be going around breaking into places to steal stuff they need to survive. Surely there must be room for law and order and morality. As a matter of fact, there is. People in stage four determine right and wrong with emphasis on the importance of law and, and what it means for society at large. Unlike people in stage one who only obey the law to avoid getting in trouble, people in stage four truly appreciate what laws do to protect society. Like how they're made to protect our rights and our welfare. because we all have a responsibility to obey laws that keep us safe. Everyone has a right to feel safe. Although, now that I think about it, the law is also stopping Hines from obtaining a drug that would save his wife's life. Doesn't her right to life override the greedy pharmacist's right to make money? That's right, Milky Mike. In fact, that's what people in Stage 5 think about the law, because laws are meant to protect us, but laws that harm us do need to be changed. And that's where Stage 6 comes in, trying to make laws that are generalizable to the welfare of all humanity. Uh, and that's also where leadership comes in. The job of every leader is to set an example for their followers, so it's important that they set a morally good one. Wait, that reminds me, I got a phone call from Hines himself, and he wanted to do a news story on that today. What? When were you going to tell me? We were getting to that, but I wanted you to explain the Heinz dilemma and Kohlberg's stages, because he's staging a huge protest against Mayonnaise Medical LLC, the pharmaceutical company that made the drug. Apparently, Hines did get arrested for stealing it, and although he was found not guilty, Mayonnaise Margaret, the pharmacist, was still able to sue him for $20,000, and he and his wife had to sell their house to pay it off, so they're homeless now. That's the sound of people talking. Mother of margaritas. It looks like this will be a great example to use to teach the kids about ethical leadership and what happens when you don't have it. Oh, yeah, ethical leadership. Heinz said he wanted to talk about that today. Good afternoon, Heinz, and good afternoon, Hunts. Hey, kids, we're protesting a corporation run by a very greedy and immoral leader. My husband didn't deserve to be arrested and sued for saving my life. Mayonnaise Margaret is going to pay for ruining our lives. Indeed, we are seeing the toxic triangle in full force here. What's the toxic triangle? The toxic triangle of destructive leadership consists of toxic leaders, susceptible followers, and conducive environments. Destructive leaders like Mayonnaise Margaret, the pharmacist, typically have a lot of charisma, narcissism, and power that they exploit to further their own personal agenda of hate, usually as a result of negative life events. Susceptible followers can be either conformers or colluders. Now, office workers inside the building are colluders. They're fully aware of how messed up this company is, but they keep working here anyway because it satisfies their ambitions, their questionable values, and similar worldviews. The police officer standing outside the office trying to stop us from giving Mayonnaise Margaret the butt whooping she deserves are conformers. They're doing their job because it's the law, and obeying the law is how they feed their families. Although their own maturity and core self evaluations may not be great if they're willingly defending a company like this. What kind what kind of environment do you think could have fostered the rise of a leader less corrupt? The U.S. healthcare system, of course. Toxic leaders tend to emerge in environments where there's a perceived threat, instability, a lack of checks and balances, and a culture that doesn't question its leaders. In this case, at least in the eyes of the U.S. healthcare system, the perceived threat seems to be people who don't have money. The culture values profits over people's lives, especially for the CEO. And because the entire executive board of the company agrees with this, there are no checks and balances to intervene when the CEO gets corrupt. And when people realize that, there becomes instability. Uh, and last, hold on. And lastly, Heinz, uh, The question everyone at home is asking is, what can followers do to mitigate the effects of toxic leadership? Unfortunately, Lemonade Larry, a lot of these followers don't feel particularly engaged with company leadership. Now, there are several leadership typologies we can use to classify the employees inside this building who are just trying to do their 9 to 5 job without worrying what's going on out here. We're going to use Kellerman's typology because it's easiest to understand in plain English. People who don't care what the leader is doing, as long as it doesn't affect them, are bystanders and isolates. They come in, they do their job, and they go home. Half of them have never met Mayonnaise Margaret, let alone what company policies she's been implementing. On the other hand, participants, activists, and diehards feel very strongly about Mayonnaise Margaret. Participants have been discussing this with her in meetings and emails. Activists are in the crowd out here protesting with us, and the well, that's what the diehards are doing. Thinking sippy cup. Is everyone okay? We gotta go. Well, kids, it seems we've lost contact with Hines and Hunts. While we wait for him to find a safer place to call us from, here's a word from our sponsors. Do you want to achieve higher stages of moral reasoning? Are Kohlberg's dilemmas too difficult to understand? Do people underestimate your leadership capacities because you're a woman? Hi, I'm Pepsi Penny. Introducing James Rest's four-component model. You see, as Carol Gilligan pointed out in her book, In a Different Voice, Kohlberg's stage theory is biased against the moral development of women. Research has shown that traditional views of masculinity and femininity tend to orient men's moral considerations toward abstract concepts of justice and women's moral considerations toward real relationships. But Kohlberg's stage theory places the latter at lower stages, which is a huge problem because Kohlberg claimed that higher stages of development were inherently better. But with James Rest's four-component model, all genders can achieve higher moral reasoning. The four components are sensitivity, judgment, motivation, and character. Let's look at a real-world example to show you how this works. On the eve of Michaelmas, Sister Sprite is late for a very important sermon that she's supposed to preach. On her way to the cathedral, however, she witnesses a car accident. Now, this is where the four components come in. Sister Sprite realizes that whether to help or not is an issue of morality because people's lives are at stake. In other words, she is sensitive to the needs of others. Now she's thinking of what she should do. Should she A. Skip Mass to help the victims, B. Ask the victims if they are hurt before continuing on her way, C. Call 911 but do nothing else, or D. Do nothing at all and keep running because she's late? Sister Sprite knows that making the wrong judgment could cost the victims their lives, and those are more important than getting somewhere on time. And that's where the third component comes in, motivations. Sister Sprite knows that she has a responsibility to deliver the sermon on Michaelmas, but she also knows that if she doesn't help the act the accident victims, they will die. But because she has the character, which is the courage to do the right thing in the face of temptation, she does. She helps the victims. Now, this model of moral reasoning is not gender specific. People of all genders are not only capable of adhering to these steps, ooh, but they follow them in this exact order in every situation. With James Rest's four components, everyone can achieve stage 6 moral reasoning regardless of the situation. You can order your copy of the four components for just $19.99. Call now and you can get free shipping. These are the credits. Or something. I don't know the words. And these are the articles and stuff.